We are back with our third
Third?
podcast of the year?
Fourth?
Fourth.
I can't keep
I don't
up
know,
anymore.
but we're back. And Deacon is back with his second podcast. Yay!
Oh, he is like dialed today.
I don't know what he's looking at, but we got a bottle, we got a binky, and what do we got? We got bitches.
Yeah, we
It's
do.
true. It's true.
Triple threat. The trifecta.
Speaking of bitches, well, not really bitches, but it's cussing. It was really funny yesterday in our call with someone that's in the cohort. We did our intro call, and she said, fuck. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for saying that around the baby. And I was like, this baby hears fuck so frequently, huh? Yeah. He's going to have a potty mouth. And that's okay, because he'll never hear mom say, oh, I feel fat today. Or anything negative about bodies or food. Complain about you working out. It's fine. If fuck is the worst thing he hears, so be it.
It's funny. When I think of cussing as a kid, I went to private Catholic school and I literally asked my mom. I remember this moment so distinctly, and she will say it as well, where she was literally sitting on the toilet and I was like 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And I walk in while she's going to the bathroom because, you know, no privacy, as you know, now that you have a kid.
Correct.
And I'm like, Mom, I have a question. And she's like, okay, like what's going on? I'm like, can I say hell? Literally was like, the Bible says it, so why can't I say it? Like it was referencing something that I was learning in school. And she was like, and I think she was just trying to hold it in and give the best response. But she was like, I mean, you can say it as a place that exists, but just don't tell someone to go there. And that's literally
I can picture Poppy saying that.
I remember being introduced to my first cuss word, basically, because I was like,
nice.
Why can the Bible say it, but I can't? Like, why am I whatever? Point. I was a really smart 8-year-old. I was like, I gotta ask questions. And then that quickly evolved into just saying all the cuss words. So, you know.
Well, but you grew up in like Boston area. Like, it's like cuss words are just like your language. Like, that's like,
it's
if
a
you're
part of
a
our
kid that
culture.
doesn't say fuck, like, I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I mean,
culture.
every time my mom, you know, and dad got in a fight, it was like cussing central. So I was just, it's like educational for me. I was like, all right, here's all these words that exist. And now, and I think because my parents never were like, don't cuss, don't whatever, I use it in very appropriate ways. Like I'm not overusing it because I was never sheltered from not saying certain things. It was very much
that's our theory. We have a theory about that.
Yeah. Yes.
Like Kaden and I, because like my parents didn't cuss. Like I would get my mouth washed out with soap if I said stupid or shut up, which I said frequently to Griffin. Like I was beefing with him all the time, and I got my mouth washed out with soap, and but Caden's sister grew up in cussing because like his brother, like he cussed, his brother cussed, his parents cussed. Like they kind of just like let it rip because he's 8 years older than her, and she doesn't really cuss. Like she's very like
interesting.
And I'm not the person who's just gonna cuss for no reason. Like I'm not gonna say a sentence where fuck's in every other word, but I say like I cuss. My parents think I'm a trucker, but I don't cuss that much. I don't know why they think I'm like that. Whatever. But that's the theory, is if you grow up in a household that doesn't allow you to cuss and makes it think it's bad, and you cuss more. So,
Yep. Yeah. So, on the thoughts of cussing, Deacon, there you go. There's your lesson. Binky's going in.
We don't always use passy. We try not to use passy too frequently, but passy is being utilized today. Okay, what about Papa? Anyways, today...
Oh, Bubs.
We had an ACA call last night. We have our client case study call every other week. Once a month. We have calls every other week for ACA. Every other call is about client case studies where clients can bring their case studies to us. And then the other two is like a presentation. The other one is a presentation that we do. And last night oh no, not the passy. You know what, Chris? You take it away.
We'll always show the real and the raw, including in our podcast. Binky's on the loose. But yes, yesterday we had a call, and one of the topics that came up with our ACA clients was essentially talking about how to kind of be like not so soft. And, you know, one of our ACA clients in particular was like, I feel like I've just been going so easy on my clients. And like she recently signed up and she recognized that like, oh, through what she's learned through our coaching already, that she could probably be a little bit firmer and a little bit more authority based in her coaching. And she spoke up and she just said, I feel like I've just been going easy on my clients. And it kind of opened up this discussion of like, how to call clients out, when to call clients forward. Is it too bitchy to do it one way? Is it too soft to do it another way? And, even asking feedback from clients, like at what extent are we keeping this feedback from a client when they answer, like, how do they want feedback and take feedback? And that client is like, well, I like a softer approach, but then the softer approach doesn't work. So at what point are you crossing a line that's saying, well, maybe it's a little bit harder, maybe it's a little bit quote unquote bitchier for us to make a, feedback loop for the client. So she was bringing that up, and I just really love the discussion that ultimately came from the other coaches as well, in making sure that they were kind of sharing their thoughts and sharing their angles and also sharing what they've learned the most from our program. And there was a point where Kelsey was like, one of the coaches was like, I don't want to call my client out. I want to call my client forward. And Kelsey was like, well, there kind of comes a point where you need to call your client out. Like you almost do. And we come from this era of people pleasers. I feel like a lot of us do. So when we become coaches, it's this hard balance of like, well, are we people pleasing? Are we calling people out? Are we calling people forward? And there's kind of this, like, I look at it as almost a spectrum of coaching where it's like there's different spectrums of behavior change, different spectrums of conversations and communication you need to have. So at what point and in what way are you dialing into different spectrums for your own client to give them the best result?
Yeah, and to that point, I was kind of mentioning on the call, I was like, it's it's okay to call out your clients. It's not bitchy, but sometimes it's perceived that way. And I've definitely had times in coaching where I am a very direct person. I am pretty blunt. Like sometimes I say stuff and I'm like, oh, that just kind of came out of my mouth. I don't have a filter. And so what I'm thinking is usually what comes out of my mouth in most cases. And so when I'm coaching a client, sometimes things come out and it can seem maybe a little bitchy, but it's me just being very straightforward. And I remember I rubbed a client the wrong way one time and I was like, okay, well, now I just need to understand better like what they need to receive. And so basically I did call them out. Maybe it was perceived as bitchy, but then we had a better conversation about it where I was like, hey, you're not actually doing the things that you need to be doing in order to achieve the goal that you came here to achieve. And so by me allowing that behavior and just telling you it's okay over and over again, you aren't getting better. And I know so many coaches deal with that of like, okay, well, my client's messing up, and, they're not adhering. And like, well, how are you dealing with that? How are you calling them out when that happens in a productive way? And I just find that a lot of coaches deal with, okay, well, we'll just try again next week. Okay, we'll just try again next week. Okay, well, now it's been 4 weeks and you've told them to try again next week and they're not trying again. And so it's like, hey, how do we find a productive way to deal with these situations in a way that the client is going to receive it? And I think that starts with like what we talk a lot about is motivational interviewing. And really
your favorite,
my favorite, which I never really did anything related to motivational interviewing because I was, again, always direct and I was like, just kind of giving people the answers. And I quickly found out when you give people the answer, they don't learn. So your client could be like, how do I hit 30 grams of protein in a meal? I'm really struggling to hit my protein. And you'd be like, okay, well, have 6 ounces of chicken breast. And it's like, well, you've told them that 16 times and they still haven't done it, right? And so it's instead of that, it's like, well, where are you struggling to hit 30 grams of protein? Like what is coming up? Because you could tell them all day to eat a certain amount of chicken breast. If they hate chicken breast, that's not solving the issue. So really getting to the bottom of like where they're struggling and what they're doing and following through with, and then you can give feedback from there.
Yeah. And I think as coaches, and this even goes back to like the discussions you and I have about textbook, like we're told this black and white way of solving problems when really coaching and working with humans is so contextual to like what they're experiencing. And I always find that coaches are so quick to fix. They're quick to want to solve. They're quick to a client sending a message and then being like, oh, okay, I'll hop on this and I'll change this or I'll do this, or I'm going to be reactive and I'm going to kind of get even aggravated towards my client for asking a question. And one thing is we kind of forget that our clients are very much beginner versions of what we ever were. So like we have to kind of step into where they're coming from. Not all the time our clients being stubborn, not all the time our clients trying to be frustrating. Sometimes they genuinely just don't know. So when a problem comes up and they're like, well, I don't like chicken, it's not them being like, well, I just don't want the chicken. It's them saying, hey, this is maybe hurting my relationship with food, for example. If I wanted to ask a client a deeper question, maybe it's them being like, well, I actually find that I'm like dreading going into my meals and my relationship with food is getting impacted. And so for me, I can kind of be like, well, how can we bridge a gap? How can we make meals enjoyable while also teaching you balanced eating and making you understand, obviously, that protein, hi, Deacon, that protein needs to be a focus as well. And so we're quick to solve and not quick to ask. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, we need to ask more questions. We need to be more curious of our clients' experiences because we're not a fly on the wall. We don't know what their meal times look like. We don't know what their relationship with their partner looks like. If their partner is even putting them down a little bit for certain food choices, we don't know if they genuinely don't know what carb sources are. I mean, when I was working with very beginner lifestyle clients, I had to give clients a list of like, here's your carb sources, here's your fat sources, here's your protein sources, because some people just don't know. They didn't know how to read a food label. They didn't know how to look and compare nutrition facts. So there's a lot of information that us coaches know at a default because of our experiences and how advanced we are, that we kind of forget that we're putting ourselves in the position where we have to strip it back though. Like we have to be more patient with our clients. And this is where I think calling forward is one thing of like, you're asking more questions, you're calling them forward into making adjustments and working with them to make adjustments. But if after time and time and time again, those adjustments aren't working and you have been flexible and you have done the motivational interviewing, that's almost where you have to start calling someone out, in my opinion, is like, hey, we've tried this and this and this and this, and this stuff hasn't worked, and start to bring them into the reality of like, in order to change, you need to change. There needs to be that discussion at some point with some clients.
Yeah. And it's repeated behavior, right? Like I think it's really easy for us to get frustrated. And I have to remind clients of that sometimes. I'm like, hey, how long have you been dealing with that? Like if a client's asking this question, it's genuinely because they probably don't know if you have never answered it before. And I think that was one of the things I had to get really used to in coaching was like, oh my gosh, why am I getting frustrated with a client who literally hired me to learn this information, right? And to like work on this. So that's a piece of it. And I think it's too, going back to kind of what I was mentioning of asking the right questions. One of our assistant coaches, Devin, she was so used to when clients would ask her questions and I, like over and over, and she's like, I'm getting these same questions. And I would do her coach, or her check-in review. And I was like, well, you're really quick to answer their questions. And that's why they keep asking you the same question, because they know you're going to answer it. And I was like, what if you put the ball in their court a little bit and you start actually asking questions? And she kind of hesitated. She's like, well, doesn't that make me a bad coach? Like if I have all the answers, I'm a good coach. And in some capacity, like that's what she kind of was alluding to, was like, if I don't have the answer to my client, like I'm a bad coach, they're not going to see me as authoritative. And I was like, well, or they're going to see that you're meeting them where they're at, right? And they're going to be like, oh wow, like they're going to also come to the conclusion on their own that doesn't make you a bad coach, because they're still learning. And some clients just genuinely need to like come to those conclusions on their own versus constantly being told. It's the difference between coaching and teaching. And so that's really hard for coaches. And I think it's really easy to feel like you're going to lose your authority if you don't have all the answers. But in reality, it's based on each client. So I want to make sure everyone knows it's like motivational interviewing is not lack of authority. If anything, it's actually quite the opposite, because now you actually know how to more effectively answer a question, especially if it's a repeated question that a client keeps asking you to.
Yeah, and I think too with clients, they want to learn. Like they aren't just, yes, they're hiring you to get the answers, but I also would argue like they want to eventually do this on their own, and they need an understanding of like the why and the what and the how behind it to some degree. We're obviously not trying to be like, hey, here's how to become a coach. It's more of like, okay, well, here's how you can better understand this concept and how it applies to you specifically. And that can even increase adherence with you and your clients and builds that authority. So it's not always about talking to the client directly, being like, here's what you need to do. It's here's considerations, here's education, here's stuff that you need to take into account, because it's stuff that they're not going to hear anywhere else. They're being let off in every other area of life typically. And for us, we get to create an expansion for them in some area that they've really struggled with for a long time. And I think that's a great power tool that we have as coaches, is all the knowledge that we get to have and how we get to create an actual personal connection with a client blended with that knowledge, and like not just be the teacher. I always think of like college sometimes, like, you know, you go to these college classes and they're like huge classes. I remember some of my classes were like hundreds of people. I never knew my professor, but you know, they're talking to me and they're lecturing on stuff and I'm just expected to know this information. Whereas coaching is like, we are the teachers, but we get a one-on-one connection with the student. And I think that's a very powerful angle that we get to take, of having authority, but also having connectivity with who we're speaking to.
100%. Knowing who you're speaking to. I kind of brought that up last night of like, when you say things, you start, if you're really like, being observant is one huge part of being a good coach, is like you're observing how a client receives information and how they respond to information. I actually don't know how I learned that skill. I think it just like kind of came to me one day where I was like, wow, it's interesting. Like people just respond so much differently. And when you actually take like human behavior more seriously, you kind of recognize those patterns and how people behave and how you can respond in certain situations to different clients, where some clients will be like, no, I want you to be super hard on me and, you know, tell me how it is and like be aggressive, like yell at me if I do something bad. I have had so many clients like that. They're like, just yell at me. And I'm like, that's actually not what you need, because you're yelling at yourself already. Like, you don't need me to yell at you. You need feedback and you need actually probably more support. Whereas I find that the clients who are the opposite are like, I need gentle coaching. Like, I need you to be super like easy on me. No, you actually don't need that, because you're being super easy on yourself, and everyone else in your life is also being easy on you and kind of validating excuses, where now you kind of need the opposite. Like, I actually do need to push back a little bit on you, and it obviously not in a super bitchy way, but in a gentle way that you can receive. And so it's just interesting when you start to learn that. And I think too, it's a lot of times we just think like, oh, I'm being, you know, I'm calling my client out, I'm being a bitch or whatever, but it's a pattern interrupt. They're so used to having this pattern where they aren't listening, they aren't adhering, and they've done that forever. And then they hire you as their coach, and they start super hot. I've seen it so many times. They start super hot. They're in this honeymoon phase, like crushing it. They're doing everything. They're adhering. And then boom, like month 2 hits and they're like a disaster. And you're like, what happened? Like, where did we go? Well, it's because that's the pattern they're used to. And they've never realized, or maybe they do realize it and they are aware of it, but they aren't aware of why it's happening. And so you have to now be that pattern interrupt for them of like, hey, I'm noticing this trend of when XYZ happens. Like, maybe that's the part that you're educating on, is like, you're actually recognizing when they falter and when they start to like lose momentum, and you're educating them on that piece of it. And that's what the lesson is you're teaching them, and how they can continue to like move forward. Am I tracking on that? Did I just ramble?
I mean, it makes sense to me. So
hopefully it makes sense to whoever's listening.
Yeah. And I think also your authority, then I wanted to tie this into like re-sign and retention. Your authority is going to matter significantly. I mean, at the point of onboarding and presenting yourself and how you communicate. If you struggle with this, I would go literally role play it the same way people role play sales calls. Like, go role play authority and different conversations. Something you can actually do using AI is like, go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I want to run through like this scenario with you. Yes, ChatGPT is obviously a robot, so there's going to be a little bit of a gap, but there is this sense of like being and telling them, hey, here's a scenario where I want to coach my client through. You be the client. I'm going to be the coach. Let's work through this. And you can work on your role playing. You can do it with other coaches as well. Like, I always try to connect other newer coaches with other newer coaches so that the both of them can really get together and like role play and mastermind and talk about different scenarios. Because at the end of the day, we all need the information. We all need to practice this stuff in order for, collectively, in my opinion, like the entire industry to be improved and to be better. And so at the point of onboarding all the way to the point of re-sign, your authority really matters. And if you haven't shown authority the entirety of someone's 6-month program, and you've let them walk all over you and call the shots and, you know, let their excuses be validated and tell them, okay, just another week and another week and another week, you're going to get to re-sign, and then you're going to wonder why none of your clients are re-signing. You're going to wonder why all of them are like, well, I'm just going to go try something else. And then you get frustrated and you think, well, what the heck? Because I know you can't do it on your own. What do you mean you're going to go try it on your own? You haven't done it yet. And they're probably saying that because they don't see the value in staying when truly nothing has been adjusted and changed and no hard conversations have been had. My two longest standing clients, Melissa and Jasmine, I I think they're my lifers. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to actually get rid of them, and I don't know if I would ever let them leave because we just have such a close relationship. They haven't stayed with me. Like, Jasmine's been with me since 2020. Melissa has been with me since 2021. They haven't stayed with me because I've let them off the hook for every single excuse they've ever made. Have they had hard seasons where I've had to kind of level with them a little bit more? Absolutely. But they've also had very hard seasons where I've had to hold a standard for them and have honest conversations and call them forward and show them, past behaviors or patterns of behavior that we're getting stuck in. And they've continued to stay in the program because I have had that authority, because I positioned myself appropriately for them to know that Chris is going to hold me to this, but also they know that they can come to me like they need a friend, if they do need someone to connect with. And I love that about the relationships I get to create with my clients. And I think that really builds longevity, is balancing this. It's a skill set. It takes time. It takes learning and like immersing yourself into things like motivational interviewing. But once you can kind of nail that and start to do the reps in it, it gets that much better for you, for your clients, for your retention, for your business. So all of this really connects into what the end goal is, which is to retain clients and even just keep a long-term relationship with them. Oh my goodness. Look at that smile on Deacon. Oh, now we're sobbing again.
He's like, oh, he's good. I don't know what that face is. But you actually made me think of a point, because I've actually had a few clients talk to me about this and ask for my opinion where, you mentioned like the people that aren't resigning after 6 months because you've been soft on them and let them go. I've actually had the case where someone is like that and then they join and work with me, they join ACA, whatever, and they start to try to become more authoritative with, working through Beyond the Cert and working through client cases. And then they realize this client who has continued to re-sign with them because they've been soft on them and let them off the hook now is frustrated because they've actually started to hold them more accountable to their actions. So you have a client who's just, I know we all have that client, or we've had that client that just stays with you and you're like, why are you staying with me? You're just paying me for no reason. You're not following the plan. You're not adhering to anything and you're just paying me, but you still check in week after week. You haven't ghosted me and you're kind of confused. So I would love to talk about that. What do you do when, you've started to implement in more of the authoritative approach, and now your client who you've let off the hook is pushing back, when you're actually more effectively coaching them and holding them accountable, but they're just so used to being left off the hook. What happens then?
Yeah. I think it's so funny when this happens because it's such a clear reason, right? It's I don't know why my clients push back. But there's a very clear reason why the client is actually giving that. Something when a client starts to push back a little bit is going back even to some of what Kelsey's already said of asking more questions to them. Hey, what about this redirection, or what about this feels very difficult, or what about this is creating resistance? Because then they're probably going to open up a little bit, and some of what they open up about is probably going to be admitting to how they're used to being coached versus how they're being coached now. And so if a client's giving me pushback, a lot of the times I'm still asking questions. I need to ask them questions. I need to understand where I got under their skin, where this is coming from. And also one of my favorite questions is, where else is this coming up for you in your life right now? That is my favorite.
The best Chris question.
Best Chris question. It's where else is this coming up? Because if they're giving me pushback based on this redirection that I'm giving them, and I've had clients open up to me and say, oh, well, I've had a hard time communicating this to my partner, and I'm really frustrated with that, so it just kind of feels like I'm getting pushback here now, or getting resistance here. And then I get to clarify with them and say, hey, I am not trying to be this bad guy. I'm not trying to be an asshole to you. Is he eating your cord? Is what's happening there?
He's yanking on it, yanking on the cord. He has it by a death grip right now.
I don't know what I'm watching. Wow. Yes.
Yeah,
sorry guys. I was like so distracted. I'm like, I don't know if I thought he was eating her
This is
headphone
just
cord.
reality. This is just
Um,
he hasn't started luckily putting things in his mouth that aren't like bottles yet. He's not in that phase, thank God, but I'm terrified for that phase because we already go through with
yeah.
Burrow.
Yeah. It's gonna be quite you're gonna have two Mouthers in the house. But all of that to be said is like, I want to know where else this is coming up. I also want to clarify my intentions as well. Like, my intention to how I'm changing my coaching isn't to be a bitch, isn't to halt your progress, isn't to make things more difficult. It's actually to hold you to the standard at which you hired me for. And I would probably argue that all of your clients want you to evolve and grow. Like, they want you to be getting certified. They want you to be working on your skill set. They want you to be doing X, Y, Z. Why? Because like they want to get to a higher level too. And sometimes they just need to be reminded of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And it's really tough. I know I had a lot of pushback when I finally started kind of, when you first start coaching, you're like, you know what, I want to people please a little bit more. I haven't always been super like people pleasing, but I feel like when I first started coaching, I was like, well, I want my clients to like me. Like, I don't want them to quit because, I'm coming out of the gates hot and like, giving them
Yep.
a bunch of feedback. And so in the beginning I overeducated, and that was my way of kind of like pushing them. It was just like making sure that they understood why I was doing things the way I was. But I definitely had my times of like not asking the right questions and just over educating. And I did it actually a lot in my sales calls, and that was always feedback I got from business coaches. They're like, stop educating. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So that was always my way of like kind of getting around the people pleasing aspect. And um I think it was a big turning point where I did have a lot of clients leave when I started to, coach more effectively, because they weren't used to that. They were used to just kind of like my education and like them learning that way, but they never actually were truly learning. And I actually had a lot of clients get frustrated, and that was kind of a turning point in my business where I was like, wow, maybe I'm just attracting the wrong type of client, and I actually need to be attracting, the higher level client who does want to be challenged a little bit more,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, all of that. And so it was a big turning point. And to put your point, it's like, yeah, you have to understand why, like always be inquisitive, understand why they're upset about being pushed more, where it's coming up in their life, like where else that's coming up, and understanding that. And then also just at that point, it's like sometimes you outgrow your clientele, and there's going to be clients that aren't ready
Yeah.
to be pushed the way that you are learning to coach effectively. And that's part of coaching, especially when you coach for a long time, is that you outgrow clients, and they eventually won't, they won't want to be coached the way you want to coach. And that is okay. It's kind of like relationships. Like, everybody, I'm sure, I haven't, because Caden was my first
I was
boyfriend.
gonna say, what comparison are we making about relationships here with your dating advice?
I have no dating advice for you
I
other
would love
than
to do a really fun podcast about both of our dating histories and how different they are.
I never officially had boyfriends. I had things. But yeah, no one ever wanted to apparently actually date me. I was never a slut, by the way. To put that out there. Because things made it sound way worse than it is. It was actually the opposite, because I didn't want to do anything with boys.
It was a non-thing.
That's why they didn't want to date me. That's funny, huh? He's laughing. Anyways, that's so off topic. But what I was saying was, with dating, you just outgrow people. Like, again, I wouldn't know. But I know there are cases where you're dating someone and you just genuinely outgrow them, and what you want and what they want is not the same. And so it can happen sometimes like that with clients. It can be that way. And that's okay too. It's part of growing as well.
Yeah. I was going to say, I remember actually when I started becoming a little more authoritative and a lot less like, I'll coach you in whatever you want type of thing. If someone wanted to come in and they didn't want macros, okay, I wasn't throwing them macros. If they didn't want this, I wasn't throwing them that. Like, I wasn't challenging my clients. And when I started to challenge them, I remember there was one client who shocked me in her survey, her exit survey that she did. Like, and I, not to toot my own horn, I didn't get a lot of bad feedback very often. I felt like once I was expanding my team, I started getting more feedback that I had to learn how to handle. But for me personally, I never had someone come to me and be like, Chris is a bad coach or anything, or I didn't see progress, whatever. The craziest part is she saw progress in my program. So and I started to give her a little bit more tough love. I started coaching her a little bit more authoritatively. And then she didn't re-sign. And I will say she was not my ideal client. She was a little bit older than I typically wanted to work with, but she was someone that, I just brought on essentially because I could help her. And in her survey, I just remember highlighting certain pieces of things I would say, and she didn't really like the tough love, and she didn't really like how authoritative I was trying to be, and she didn't really like the things that I was actually trying to evolve into. She wanted a different approach to coaching. And I had to have this moment where I was like, and it makes you panic. It makes you think, am I doing the wrong thing? Because this one client is now giving me feedback directly negatively about the thing that I am trying to change. And as a coach, you're going to have a lot of moments like that. You're going to have a lot of moments from clients or feedback or social media, the trolls on social media commenting on your stuff that almost makes you question like, oh, should I not be evolving into this? Should I not be learning this? And I had to take a step back and just think about that and remind myself of why I was evolving into this. And it's so funny because had I let her stop me, this was like 3-4 years ago now, but had I let her stop me, I wouldn't have been the coach I am today, coaching who I'm coaching. Like I evolved and became the coach I am, coaching coaches and entrepreneurs and business and all this stuff because I allowed myself to evolve and my skill set to evolve. And with that, it's the same with friendships. It's like as you get older and as your life changes, like some friendships are just not going to evolve with you. Some people are just not going to grow with you. And that's okay. But it doesn't mean to hold yourself back because other people are uncomfortable with your growth. And I really had to step into that as a coach. So all of this to say, like, you're going to have some moments that are so loud and make you really question yourself and question the skill set you're building and why you're deciding to make the changes that you're making. And it's easy to want to retreat back into like, well, I'll just be the people-pleasing coach who lets everyone do what they want. But you have to remember your quality of life, your quality of your career and how you feel, because you can't just change for everyone else. You have to have a certain value set and like core values that you follow. And that ideal client's probably going to change a bit with it. And that's okay. That's actually the best part of growth, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's brings up a time when I was first starting to scale my business as well. And I had my first assistant coach and I had, did you do that?
Did you just fart?
That was Deacon.
That was so clear.
Dude, you just farted on
national
live television. You just farted on live television. It's so silly. Just unbothered here. But
yep.
I remember I had brought on this man who was in the military and actually his wife as well. And they both started with my assistant coach and she was not used to coaching men. Mm-hmm. And this guy was, I don't have nightmares anymore about him, but I still think about like how awful the situation was. Anyways, he was like, you know what? I'm not a good fit for this coach. Like, I want to be coached by you. And at the time I was already at like 35 clients on my own roster while trying to scale, while business coaching, while doing all the things. We had just moved. I'm like overwhelmed. And I'm like, you know what? Sure, whatever. Well, he had injuries and like he kept getting mad. And like, basically he was like, she isn't hard enough on me. And I'm like, okay, well, sure. Lo and behold, the case was that he just didn't want anyone else to create his program for him. He just wanted to create his own. He knew it more than we did, apparently. And so, I did my best to be, and like, that was the thing. I was actually almost too authoritative to the point where I was like fighting back. I was like, no, I know more than you. Like, and like, I kind of took that stance, which was not a good stance either. But he just wanted to essentially create his own program. Anything I said did not go. And I had to actually fire him as a client, and we parted ways. But it was because I was trying, it's kind of the same situation as you, but completely opposite, and it kind of deterred me away. I was like, should I not be that way? Is that turning people off? Because he wanted, he was almost trying to take the authority from me, and I'm like, well, shoot, maybe I just need to, will people just be happier if I just, don't tell them how it is? it made me question every part of me. He would like comment such nasty things on my reels for a few months after. I had to block him on everything. It was like,
Dude, people are crazy.
it was wild. And it was because it was a post where I was like, you're not going to get results without putting in the work. Like your coach, you hired a coach. Just because you hired a coach doesn't mean you're going to get results.
When someone gets triggered, it's like, did we strike a chord? Because we need to hold up a mirror for a second.
Yeah. Also, this man never checked in. So I'm like, dude, I can't coach you if you're not telling me what is wrong. And like, he had injuries and I was working around them and trying to, I know, he was mean. Trying to work with his physical therapy. It was a whole thing. But anyways, it kind of also led me to actually realizing like, I need to be authoritative, but it's not in the way that I was, because I was almost like the proud authoritative where it was like, I know more than you, deal with it, shut up and just listen. And I realized I had kind of swayed way too far to one way to where it wasn't actually productive. And that kind of led me to like more like realizing coaching is more than telling and more than like being as smart as possible. And it's actually like learning more about your client and how they behave and how they can receive information better. And so that was like a big turning point for me. I wasn't ever too soft as a coach. In fact, I feel like I had to actually soften myself because I was like, I'm like, I know more than you. Shut up and sit down. And like, that's not also productive at all. And so I was very humbled by that situation. And also that was a time in my life where I was like, that was, I think, probably the start of my big burnout, my crash out.
Yeah,
my first.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know it's so interesting, all the different spectrums that you can go into, but, I think at the end of the day, it just goes to show that it's not a straightforward journey. It's not meant to be easy by any means. Like even you and I have had to learn in our journey of like building our authority. And it's funny, we were even talking to Kendall about content yesterday, I think it was. And or I'd asked her for feedback. I'd sent her a text and I'm like, hey, can you she wanted me to create a certain type of reel. And I was like, can you give me feedback? And she was like, everyone is being talked to on social media right now. Every creator is trying to be this like super hard authority figure, like, calling people out on their bullshit, all this stuff, which I've always kind of done. We both have always kind of done. And it was an interesting perspective from her to kind of be like, be authority, but like be the big sister energy. Like that is, and I love how she worded it to me. She was like, I think people see you as the big sister sometimes. And like, the person who just has the information, like they want advice from you for your lived experiences. And even converting that into my social media now. And so maybe you guys need to do a reflection on your social media and even recognize, well, maybe I've been showing myself a little bit too hard in a way. Like maybe I have been a little too much here. So let me actually soften it a little bit to be more of the big sister than to be this like hard-headed coach. So again, there's so much refinement that goes into it. I'm still learning the balance of it, especially on social media right now. Like I'm trying not to be influenced by all the other people that are talking to their audiences and kind of being assholes to their audience. Like I want to find a balance, and there's always going to be learning moments in that. And it's not straightforward all the time.
It's definitely learning. And that was what one of the coaches on our call said, is like, it's just a learned thing that I have to work at. It's not going to come immediately. And I think that's a big thing, is we all expect to just like authority somehow just like creeps up on us and happens immediately. And it's like, no, it's like a very much so a learned skill and something you just have to practice and get better at. And so yeah, that's also what we help a ton with in ACA, an Apex Coach Accelerator, is helping coaches and in those navigating those tough conversations and tough cases, so that you do feel more confident being the authority and helping your clients to the best of your ability.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's pretty much what we got for you guys when it comes to authority today. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Deacon seems to have had maybe an indifferent experience to our podcasting today. He's like, I don't know about this. I don't know.
Sir, it's not that sad. It's actually it was a good podcast.
Hopefully you guys are reacting to this podcast a lot better than Deacon is. And give us 5 stars, please, and thank you. Oh, this poor guy. He's having such a hard time. But seriously, thank you for listening. If you guys have any topic suggestions, please let us know. And we'll be back next week. So we will see you then.
See ya in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.